In the spring of 1241, Europe awaited the end of the world. An unknown, unstoppable force, which chroniclers called the Tartars, had burst forth from the eastern steppes. In just a few years, it had wiped Volga, Bulgaria, and the Russian principalities from the face of the earth. In just a few months, Poland and Hungary fell, two kingdoms considered the shield of Christendom. In a single day at the Battle of Legnica, the army of Polish princes and Teutonic knights was annihilated. 2 days later, at the Battle of Mohi, the same fate befell the flower of Hungarian knighthood. Mongol vanguards stood on the Adriatic and at the gates of Vienna. The Pope called for a crusade, and the Holy Roman Emperor, Frederick II, hastily gathered his troops. But the enemy at the doorstep seemed invincible. And then suddenly, at the very end of the year, the Mongols stopped and turned back. Europe was saved not by its armies, but by an event that occurred thousands of kilometers away. In distant Karakoram, the great Khan Ogaday had died. The leaders of the Western campaign had to return to elect a new ruler. But what if this had not happened? Let us imagine for a minute that Ogaday had lived for another 5 years. What if, in 1242, the armies of Batu Khan and the brilliant Subutai received the order? Continue. Watch this video to the end, and you will find out how the history of the Mongol invasion of the heart of Europe could have changed. Let's compare the known outcome with the possible alternative. Was Europe ready for the blow? By 1241, the heart of Europe, the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy in Rome, was in a state of deep internal conflict. It was not a unified monolith capable of fighting back. Emperor Frederick II Hohenstaufen, one of the most brilliant and extraordinary rulers of the Middle Ages, was in a state of permanent war with Pope Gregory IX. They had excommunicated each other twice. This struggle was not just an exchange of curses. The armies of the Guelphs, supporters of the Pope, and Ghibellines, supporters of the Emperor, were fighting all over Italy, weakening each other and wasting resources that could have gone to defense. Frederick II himself, despite controlling the resources of Germany and southern Italy, was focused not on his eastern borders, but on his Italian castles in Apulia. He needed his best troops for the fight against the Lombard League. For Frederick, the Mongol threat was real, but just as real was the threat from the Pope, who was trying to strip him of his throne. His attention was divided. The German princes, who formed the basis of imperial power, were also busy with their own feuds. France, under the rule of the young Louis IX, was just cooling down from the Albigensian Crusades and was not yet the centralized power it would later become. England was far away and busy with its own barons, and Spain was absorbed in the Reconquista in the south. The shield of Europe, Poland and Hungary, was broken. Mongol vanguards were already probing the passes into Austria and raiding the suburbs of Vienna. Christendom simply had no unified line of defense or joint command. European armies based on heavy knightly cavalry were powerful but cumbersome. They were a machine for a single charge. Knights despised the bow as a coward's weapon and did not know how to wage mobile warfare. The psychology of a knight was that of a duel. For them, war was a way to win glory, not to systematically destroy an enemy. They were completely unprepared for the impersonal, industrial warfare of Subutai, which was based on arrows, feigned retreats, and encirclement. They knew nothing about their opponent. The Mongols were considered savages, the wrath of God, the hordes of Gog and Magog, but no one understood their organization, their logistics, or their goals. Europe was rich, divided, and blind, an ideal target for systemic conquest. We do not know for sure what would have awaited Europe, but we can speculate on how events might have unfolded if history had taken a different path. Subscribe so you don't miss other alternative versions of history. To understand what would have happened next, one must look at the world through Mongol eyes. Their empire was not a horde in the sense we are used to. It was a scrupulously organized military and administrative machine, the likes of which the world had not yet seen. Their goal was not mere plunder, but the fulfillment of the decree of the eternal blue sky. Genghis Khan and his successors believed they were destined to unite all the peoples of the world under their rule, from one great sea to the other. The Western campaign was just one part of this global plan. While Batu Khan marched west, other Chinggisid armies were fighting the Song Empire in southern China and controlling Korea and Persia. This was the First World War. The empire was ruled from Karakoram. At the head of the Western campaign was Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson, but the true military genius was the General Subutai. He was a dog of war who had conducted more campaigns and conquered more territory than any general in history before or since. Subutai had already fought at the Khalkha River, shattered the Russes and the Cumans, and it was he who developed the plan for the invasion of Europe. This plan was based on precise intelligence. Subutai used spies, Venetian and Genoese merchants, and interrogated prisoners. This was not just simple reconnaissance. The Mongols gathered data on political relationships, the depth of rivers, the time of harvest, and the location of pastures. Their invasion was not just a raid, but a mathematically calculated logistical operation. He mapped the terrain and studied the political disagreements of his enemies. He knew about the feud between the Pope and the Emperor. He knew where the pastures necessary for his horses were and where the richest cities were located. His plan, as historians believe, was not limited to the conquest of Hungary. That was merely the creation of a staging ground. His goal was to reach the last sea, the Atlantic Ocean. Hungary and Poland were just the first stage. Next were Germany, Italy, and France. In our history, everything came to a halt in December 1241. News arrived from Karakoram of Ogeday's death. According to the Great Yasa, the law of Genghis Khan, all Chinggisids of the blood royal, including Batu, had to return to the capital to participate in the Kurultai, the assembly to elect a new great Khan. This was a political decision, not a military one. Subutai begged Batu to stay. The army was ready for a thrust toward Vienna and northern Italy. The enemy was demoralized, their armies smashed, but Batu could not take the risk. He had powerful enemies in Karakoram, particularly Ogeday's widow and her son Guyuk. Batu knew that if the Kurultai was held without him, Guyuk would become the great Khan, and then Batu's own ulus, domain, and perhaps his very life would be in danger. He gave the order to retreat, and the army left Hungary, returning to the Pontic steppes. This decision saved Europe, but it was based entirely on the internal politics of the Mongol elite. But now let us suppose a slight change occurs. Ogeday, known for his fondness for drink, falls gravely ill in December 1241, but he survives. Doctors or shamans save him, and he lives for, let's say, another 5 years. In the spring of 1242, riders of the Yam service, the Mongol Pony Express, the fastest communication system of its time, are racing across the steppes. They carry not news of a death, but new orders and a confirmation of Batu's authority. Subutai and Batu, having wintered in Hungary on the captured pastures, receive confirmation from Karakoram. The sky is still with us. Conquer the West. At this moment, alternative history irrevocably diverges from our own. The army, poised on the threshold of the Holy Roman Empire, does not retreat but begins to prepare for an invasion. Europe will not get its 500-year respite. The first target of the spring 1242 campaign inevitably becomes the Holy Roman Empire. Its eastern border, Bohemia and Austria, is defenseless. Although King Wenceslaus the Mernernch of Bohemia managed to evade battle in 1241, he is now alone. The Mongol Tumans, using their favorite tactic of dividing and encircling, invade from several directions at once. One corps, as in Hungary, moves north through Moravia, diverting the forces of the northern German princes. This corps burns Olomouc and Brno, preventing the Bohemian and Polish forces from gathering to strike the main army's flank. Panic sweeps the northern German principalities. The main army under Subutais' command marches directly on Vienna. Duke Frederick II of Austria, the quarrelsome, tries to organize a defense, but his army is too small. Vienna, though fortified, is not prepared for Chinese siege technologies. Emperor Frederick II, Hohenstaufen, is in Italy at this time, fighting the Pope. He calls on the German princes and knights to unite, and they do unite. The heavy knightly cavalry of the Saxons, Bavarians, and Franconians is the most powerful military force in Europe. Let us imagine a general battle somewhere on the plains of Bavaria, near Regensburg. Tens of thousands of European knights clad in steel line up for a frontal charge. They see only the light cavalry of the Mongols before them and are filled with contempt. Against them are light and heavy Mongol cavalry, Manchu infantry, and Chinese siege engineers. The scenario of Legnica and Mohi repeats, but on a larger scale. The knights charge, their armored wedge seeming unstoppable. The Mongols scatter, using the feigned retreat tactic. They shower the knights with clouds of arrows from their composite bows, aiming for the horses. The knights, taking losses, pursue the retreating enemy, breaking their formation. This is a trap. The knightly wedge stretches out, turning into a disorganized mob. When the formation is definitively broken, fresh Mongol tumens, the heavy guard, strike from the flanks and the rear. The heavy, exhausted knights, unable to maneuver in this melee, are surrounded. The battle turns into a methodical slaughter. The army of the empire ceases to exist. After this, the German cities are left defenseless. Regensburg, Nuremberg, Frankfurt, all are besieged and taken. The Mongols immediately conduct a Chislo, a census of artisans, who are sent east to the capital of the empire. This section is dedicated to the military technical aspects of the Mongol invasion. The success of the Mongols was not a miracle. It was the result of superiority in three key areas: organization, mobility, and technology. The basis of the army was the decimal system, inherited from Genghis Khan. Warriors were divided into tens, hundreds, thousands, mingans, and 10,000s, tumens. This structure ensured iron discipline and flexibility of command, unattainable for the feudal levies of Europe. But this system was just the skeleton. Its flesh was the doctrine of combined arms. Subutai did not rely on a single type of troop, as knights did on their cavalry. Light cavalry scouts identified the enemy. Then archers wore them down. The heavy guard, Kishig, smashed a breach, and the light cavalry completed the encirclement. Every warrior was a professional. He had several horses, usually 3 to 5, which provided incredible mobility. The army could cover 100 kilometers a day, feeding on the march on dried curd, kurut, and jerky. Each warrior was self-sufficient, carrying everything necessary for survival and equipment repair. Psychological warfare played a crucial role. The Mongols often spared a few prisoners and sent them to the next town. The refugees, spreading panic and telling tales of the horrors of the assault, did half the army's work for it. The key element was logistics. Unlike Europeans, the Mongols did not drag huge supply trains behind them. Their supply train was their herd. But in conquered territories like Rus, they immediately conducted a census, Chislo, and organized the Yam service. The Yam was a system of postal stations for rapid communication and supply. It allowed Subutai to coordinate the actions of corps separated by hundreds of kilometers, as if they were fighting on the same field. Finally, technology. The Mongols were geniuses of adaptation. Having conquered China and Central Asia, they pressed the best engineers into their service. They did not invent, but they masterfully used the achievements of others. On the campaign into Europe, their army was accompanied by Chinese and Persian siege specialists. They built catapults, trebuchets, and ballistae on the spot from local timber. And most importantly, they were already using early gunpowder devices. These were not cannons, but rather fire lances, smoke bombs, and possibly small explosive projectiles, which were used to destroy walls and demoralize defenders. European stone castles designed to defend against feudal neighbors were not prepared for such a methodical and technological siege. Vienna, Regensburg, Cologne, all would have fallen within a few weeks. After the rout of the Imperial Army in Germany, the path south to Italy was open. For Subutai, Italy would have been a logical target. First, it was the richest part of Europe. Second, it was home to Rome, the ideological center of the Christian world. Emperor Frederick II, having lost his army, would be trapped in his Sicilian castles. The Pope, at this time, it could have been Innocent IV, would find himself alone against the conquerors. The Mongols would likely have divided their forces again. One corps would have passed through the Alpine passes, such as the Brenner, which led directly into Lombardy. Another would have invaded from Provence, which they could have reached after subduing southern Germany. The Po Valley, the heart of Lombardy, is perfectly flat terrain. For the Mongol cavalry, it would have been a paradise. The rich but feuding city-states, Milan, Pavia, Cremona, would have been unable to offer unified resistance. Their militias, Carroccio, were strong on foot but would have been shattered in the field, and the cities besieged. The Mongols would have taken Florence and marched on Rome. Let us imagine the siege of Rome. In 1242, it was no longer the ancient metropolis, but it was still the greatest symbol of the West. The Mongols, having no particular piety for others' holy sites, would have taken the city by storm. The only obstacle might have been the maritime republics, like Genoa or Venice. The Mongol fleet was weak. They would not have been able to cross the English Channel to conquer England, and they probably could not have taken Venice, a city built on water. But Rome stood on land. The Pope would likely have fled on Genoese galleys, perhaps to Avignon or to England. His flight would have been the end of an era. The capture of Rome and the flight of the Pope would have been not just a military, but a civilizational catastrophe for Europe. The authority of the Church as the defender of Christendom would have been destroyed. Frederick II, a realistic politician, might have tried to negotiate with the Khan to become his vassal, the King of the West under Mongol suzerainty, using his diplomatic experience as he had in the Holy Land. What would the world have looked like 50 or 100 years later? The Mongols would not have left. Having conquered Germany, Italy, and perhaps eastern France, Batu Khan would have founded a new westernmost Ulus domain of his empire. The capital of this western Ulus could have been Hungary with its convenient pastures, or the strategically located southern Germany. Europe would have been divided. Everything east of the Rhine would have become part of the Mongol Empire. The Mongols would have immediately imposed their system of administration. A census would have been conducted to collect tribute. Darugachi or Baskaks, governors, would have been appointed to oversee the local vassal rulers. German princes and Italian podestas would have become vassals of the Khan, required to travel to Karakorum or to the new western capital, Sarai on the steppe, for a Yarlik patent to rule, just as the Russian princes did. This would have had not only negative, but also paradoxical economic consequences. The Mongols were not just warriors, they were merchants. Their main value was the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace, which ensured the safety of trade routes. The Great Silk Road, which in our history ended at Constantinople or in the Levant, would now have been extended to Frankfurt, Venice, and Genoa. A single postal and trade network would have connected Lyon to Beijing. European artisans, such as armorers and weavers, would have gained direct access to Asian markets. Italian merchants like Marco Polo would not have been rare adventurers, but ordinary trade agents with offices in Karakorum. Goods and ideas would have flooded into the West from Asia. And from the West to the East, the Mongols would have exported technology, German armor makers, Hungarian weaponsmiths, French vintners. It would have been a brutal but effective exchange. Let us trace where this different trajectory would have led on the 500 or 1,000-year horizon. Europe's short-term technological lag would have been quickly overcome. Technologies that in our history trickled west over centuries would have arrived in a flood. Gunpowder, the compass, paper, and, most importantly, printing, already known in China, would have become commonplace in Europe, not in the 15th, but in the 14th century. This would have inevitably led to a technological revolution 150 years early. But at what cost? The feudal system as we know it would have been destroyed. The aristocracy, slaughtered in battle, would have been replaced by a Mongol administration or loyal vassals. The authority of the Catholic Church, having failed to protect Rome, would have been shattered forever. Perhaps Europe would have adopted a different form of Christianity, such as Nestorianism, which was popular among some Mongols, or an era of religious syncretism would have dawned. Most importantly, the Renaissance would not have happened. The Renaissance as a cultural phenomenon was based on the rediscovery of Greco-Roman heritage, on humanism, and on the freedom of the Italian city-states. In a world where these cities are destroyed, or part of an ulus, this phenomenon would have had nowhere to be born. The intellectual life of Europe would have been decapitated. The nascent universities like Bologna or Paris would have been either destroyed or turned into vocational schools for the needs of the empire. Europe would have modernized technically, but its culture, philosophy, and political structure would have been completely different. It would have been a world without the Reformation, without the Enlightenment, and perhaps without the nation-states we know today. The linguistic map of the world would be different. Instead of the flourishing of Romance and Germanic languages, the administrative language of Europe might have become Turkic or Mongolian, as it was in the Golden Horde. Perhaps even the age of discovery would have gone differently. Instead of seeking a route to India to bypass the Mongol world, Columbus and Vasco da Gama simply would not have been needed. Trade with the East would have been direct and overland. The history we have explored is a logical assumption, but it shows how fragile the world we take for granted truly was. European civilization, as it was formed, was saved not by its own strength, but by pure chance, the timely death of one man in faraway Mongolia. In 1241, Europe could offer nothing to counter the Mongol machine, not military tactics, not unity, not technology. Ugedei's survival that year would have led not just to a different outcome of a war, it would have led to the emergence of a different civilization. We would have gotten a world bound into a single Eurasian network 700 years earlier, a world with faster technological diffusion, but it would have been a world without the Gothic cathedrals of France, which would have been destroyed, without the Italian Renaissance, and without the fundamental cornerstones of Western identity based on the heritage of Roman Athens. This scenario reminds us that history is not a straight path. It is determined by decisions, resources, and, at times, the health of a single individual who stood at the crossroads of an era. Subscribe so you don't miss new versions of history.